Before I tell you what happened at that Thanksgiving dinner, the one that destroyed my family and saved my life, I need you to understand something. I'm not the villain in this story, though for a while everyone believed I was. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 28 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life learning how to be invisible in a room full of people who are supposed to love me. It's a skill you develop when you're the forgotten daughter, the one who doesn't quite fit the family portrait, the one they crop out of photos to make the composition better. But that Thanksgiving, I made sure every single person in that room saw me. Let me take you back to where it started. Not the dinner itself, that's the explosion. I'm talking about the fuse being lit, the one that had been burning slow and steady for months. The November air in suburban Illinois has a particular smell just before a storm. Damp leaves, wood smoke from someone's fireplace, and that metallic tang that means rain is coming. I sat in my car outside my parents' house that Thanksgiving evening, engine running, heat blasting, and stared at the warm glow spilling from the windows. Through the sheer curtains, I could see shadows moving. My mother darting between the kitchen and dining room with that manic energy she gets when she's hosting. My father probably already in his recliner with a beer pretending to watch football. And Madison, my younger sister, the golden child, the favorite, the sun around which our family's entire universe revolved, probably checking her makeup in the hallway mirror for the 100th time. My phone buzzed. A text from Ben Carter, my closest friend and the only person at my Chicago office who knew what I was about to do. "You sure about this? There's still time to back out." My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Was I sure? God, no. I wasn't sure about anything except that if I didn't do this, Madison's life would be destroyed. And despite everything, despite years of being second best, second thought, second choice, I loved my little sister enough to save her from our parents' mistakes, even if she'd hate me for it. I typed back, "I have to know the truth." "The truth that you already know," Ben replied. "You've had the documents for months. I need them to admit it, in front of everyone." "You're braver than me. Good luck." I pocketed my phone and looked at myself in the rearview mirror. Dark circles under my eyes from too many late nights reviewing property records and mortgage statements. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, no time for the elaborate curls Madison would be sporting. A black sweater dress that was nice enough for Thanksgiving, but practical enough that I could make a quick exit if things went badly. And they were going to go badly. I grabbed my purse from the passenger seat. Inside, nestled between my wallet and keys, was a manila folder. Thin, innocuous, the kind of thing you'd barely notice if I set it on a table. But the pages inside that folder were going to detonate like a bomb in the middle of dinner. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car. The front door opened before I reached it. My grandmother, Margaret Hart Maggie, to everyone who loved her, stood in the doorway, silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing her holiday cardigan with the embroidered turkeys. At 76, she was sharper than most people half her age. "Sarah, sweetheart." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like Chanel No. 5 and peppermint. "I was starting to think you'd changed your mind." "About Thanksgiving?" I asked, knowing that wasn't what she meant. She pulled back and looked at me with those pale blue eyes that had always seen too much. "About what you're planning to do." I shouldn't have been surprised she knew. Maggie had always been able to read me better than my own parents ever could. "I have to," I whispered. She patted my cheek. "I know you do. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Hard but right." She glanced back into the house, then lowered her voice. "Your sister doesn't know anything. Your parents made sure of that." I figured. She's going to be devastated. Better devastated now than buried alive later. Maggie squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than they think, Sarah. You always have been." Then she stepped aside to let me in, and I crossed the threshold into the house where I'd grown up, the house that held every childhood memory I had, good and bad. The house that was about to tear my family apart. The interior looked exactly like it always did on holidays. My mother had outdone herself with the decorations. A massive centerpiece of autumn leaves and gourds on the dining table, candles flickering on every available surface, the good china laid out with military precision. Everything perfect. Everything controlled. Everything a lie. "Sarah," my mother appeared from the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel. Linda Mitchell, 55 years old, had spent her entire life trying to create the image of a perfect family, perfect house, perfect daughters, perfect life. "You're here. I was worried about the traffic from Chicago." She hugged me, and I caught the scent of her perfume, Something expensive that my father definitely couldn't afford anymore, though she'd never admit it. Traffic was fine, Mom. Good. Madison's in the living room with Connor. Go say hello while I finish up in the kitchen. I made my way through the house, noting the details I'd missed on previous visits. Or maybe I'd just started seeing them differently, now that I knew the truth. The paint was peeling slightly in the corner by the staircase. The carpet was worn thin in the high traffic areas. One of the light fixtures in the hallway was flickering. These weren't the signs of a house being lived in. These were the signs of a house being neglected because there was no money for upkeep. In the living room, Madison sat on the couch next to her fiancé, Connor Blake. My sister looked stunning as always. 25 years old, honey blonde hair curled in perfect waves, wearing a burgundy dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She was showing her phone to Connor, laughing at something on the screen. Connor, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. He was a nice guy. 27, worked in real estate, had proposed to Madison 6 months ago with a ring he'd saved 2 years to afford. He wore his anxiety in the tension of his shoulders the way he kept running his hand through his dark hair. Sarah, Madison jumped up and hugged me, but it was the kind of hug you give a coworker you tolerate. Brief, perfunctory. I love your dress. Is it new? Had it for a couple years. Oh, well, it's nice. Connor stood and shook my hand. Good to see you, Sarah. You too, Connor. An awkward silence fell. Madison filled it the way she always did, by talking about herself. Connor and I just got the final head count for the wedding. 215 guests. Can you believe it? Mom's been helping me with the seating chart. It's been crazy. 215 guests. At probably $100 a plate. Plus the venue, the photographer, the flowers, the band. I did the math, automatically occupational hazard of being a financial analyst. Madison's wedding was easily going to cost $40,000. Money my parents didn't have. Money they'd borrowed to give her. Sounds like it's going to be beautiful, I said, because what else could I say? It will be. Madison grabbed Connor's hand. And speaking of beautiful things, we have some news we're going to share at dinner. Madison, Connor said quietly, maybe we should wait. Don't be silly. She kissed his cheek. Everyone's going to be so excited. I already knew what the news was. But I let her have her moment, smiling and nodding as she chattered on about centerpieces and table runners, and whether the bridesmaids should wear blush pink or dusty rose. My father appeared in the doorway. Robert Mitchell, 60 years old, former insurance company owner, or at least that's what he told people. The truth was more complicated. The truth was always more complicated. Sarah, he nodded at me. Not a hug. We weren't a hugging kind of father and daughter. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. Something flickered in his eyes. Worry, suspicion. He'd been avoiding my calls since August, since the last time he'd asked me for money and I'd refused. We both knew this dinner was going to be awkward. He just didn't know how awkward yet. Dinner's almost ready, he announced. Everyone, let's get seated. The dining room table was a masterpiece of my mother's obsessive planning. 12 place settings, even though there were only going to be 10 of us. Aunt Pat, my mother's sister, was coming with her husband Mike and their daughter Rebecca. Maggie, of course. My parents. Madison and Connor. Me. And one chair was missing. I noticed it immediately. Last year there had been 13 chairs around this table, an unlucky number, my mother had joked. This year 12. They'd removed one. I didn't have to ask which one had been cut. I could tell by the spacing, by the way the arrangement looked just slightly too perfect, too planned. They'd removed my chair. Not literally, of course. I had a seat. But the symbolism was clear. I was the odd one out. The expendable one. The one they could erase to make room for people who mattered more. I should have been hurt. Maybe a year ago I would have been. But now it just made me more certain that what I was about to do was necessary. Aunt Pat arrived with her family and the house filled with noise and greetings and the chaos of people trying to talk over each other. Uncle Mike slapped my father on the back. Cousin Rebecca, 23 and newly engaged herself, immediately gravitated toward Madison to compare wedding notes. Aunt Pat hugged my mother and complimented the table settings. I sat down in my designated seat and put my purse on the floor beside me. The folder inside seemed to burn through the leather, demanding attention. Not yet, I told myself. Let them have their moment first. Dinner was served. Turkey stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, all the traditional Midwestern staples. My mother had outdone herself, and everyone made sure to tell her so. The conversation flowed easily around me. Madison held court talking about the wedding, about the house Connor had been showing her, their first home as a married couple. She said, eyes sparkling. Connor shifted in his seat. That uncomfortable energy again. My father drank his wine a little too quickly. My mother kept jumping up to check on things in the kitchen that didn't need checking, and Maggie watched me from across the table with those knowing eyes. We were halfway through the meal when Madison stood up. She picked up her wine glass and tapped it with her fork, the crystal ringing out like a bell. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" She was glowing, absolutely radiant. This was her moment, the one she'd been waiting for. "Connor and I wanted to share some exciting news with all of you." The table quieted. All eyes on Madison, the way it had always been. "As you all know, Connor and I are getting married in 3 months. She squeezed his hand. He managed a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Well, we have another piece of amazing news. Mom and Dad have been so generous, so incredibly supportive." My mother's smile was tight. My father stared at his plate. "They've decided to give us the most incredible wedding gift." Madison paused for dramatic effect. "They're signing the house over to us. This house, our family home. Connor and I are going to start our married life here, and eventually when we have kids, they'll grow up in the same house where I grew up. Isn't it perfect?" She beamed at the table, waiting for the applause, the congratulations, the validation she'd always received. And it came. Aunt Pat clapped enthusiastically. Uncle Mike whistled. Rebecca squealed and jumped up to hug Madison. Even Maggie nodded, though her expression was carefully neutral. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Aunt Pat gushed. "What an incredible gift." How generous, Uncle Mike agreed. Madison turned to me, her smile just a little too bright. "Sarah, aren't you happy for us?" Every eye at the table turned to me, waiting, watching. I set down my fork carefully, took a breath, and looked directly at my father. "Dad," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the congratulations. "Should I tell them, or do you want to explain what you tried to make me sign last June?" The room went silent. It was the kind of silence that falls when someone's dropped a bomb and everyone's still processing the explosion, not yet feeling the shrapnel. My father's face drained of color. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Madison froze, her smile stuck on her face like a mask. Connor's eyes went wide. "Sarah," my mother said, her voice shaking, "this isn't the time." "No, Mom. It's exactly the time." I kept my eyes on my father. "Because everyone here is celebrating Madison getting the house, and I think they should know what they're really celebrating." Madison's smile finally faltered. "What are you talking about?" I reached down, pulled my purse into my lap, and extracted the manila folder. The paper felt crisp and official in my hands as I placed it on the table in front of me. "I'm talking about the truth." The truth had started 6 months ago on a Saturday in June when my phone rang at 9 in the morning. I'd been at my desk in my Chicago apartment reviewing quarterly reports for a client when my father's name lit up my screen. We weren't close. We talked maybe once a month, usually when my mother called, and handed him the phone as an afterthought. So seeing his name alone without my mother's preceding call made my stomach tighten. "Dad, Sarah Honey." His voice was too cheerful, the way people sound when they're trying to sell you something. "How are you? How's Chicago treating you?" "It's fine. What's wrong?" "Wrong, nothing's wrong. Can't a father call his daughter?" "You could, but you don't. So what's going on?" A pause. Then, "Actually, your mother and I could use your help with something. Financial matter. You're good with that stuff, right? With your job and all." Red flags were already waving in my mind. "What kind of financial matter?" "Just some paperwork we need to review. Refinancing the house, better interest rates, you know how it is. Could you come home this weekend? We could really use your expertise." My expertise. He'd never asked for my expertise before. When I'd offered to help them set up a budget 3 years ago, he'd laughed and said they were doing just fine. When I'd suggested they talk to a financial planner, he'd gotten defensive and asked if I thought he couldn't handle his own money. "Why do you need me to review it? Can't you just send me the documents?" "Well, we'd rather go over them in person. Family stuff, you know. Your mother's making pot roast." The pot roast. The universal Mitchell family peace offering. I should have said no. Should have trusted my instincts. But there was a part of me, the part that still hoped, despite everything, that my father might actually need me for something that agreed. "I can come Saturday afternoon." "Perfect. See you then, honey." He hung up before I could change my mind. I sat there staring at my phone, that knot in my stomach pulling tighter. Something was wrong. I could feel it. I called the one person who would tell me I wasn't being paranoid. Ben Carter. His voice was muffled. He was probably eating lunch at his desk like always. It's Sarah. My dad just called. Your dad? Ben knew my family dynamics. We'd been friends since I started at the firm 3 years ago, and I'd spent enough late nights venting over Chinese takeout that he knew exactly how rarely my father and I spoke. What did he want? Help with refinancing paperwork. Says he needs my expertise. Bullshit. That's what I thought. Sarah, the last time your dad asked for your help with anything you were 16, and he needed you to write a reference letter for his insurance license renewal. I remember. And you're going anyway, aren't you? I have to. What if it's legitimate? It's not. But what if... Take a lawyer. I'm not taking a lawyer to my parents' house for dinner. Then at least take the documents with you when you leave. Don't sign anything there. Promise me. I promised. Saturday afternoon, I made the 3-hour drive from Chicago to my parents' house in the suburbs. The closer I got, the more my anxiety ratcheted up. I told myself I was being ridiculous. They were my parents. They wouldn't try to scam me. Even as I thought it, I knew it was a lie I was telling myself. The house looked the same as always from the outside. 2-story colonial white with black shutters, a front porch where Madison and I used to sit on summer evenings. But as I pulled into the driveway, I noticed things I'd missed before. The gutters were sagging. Paint was chipping on the window frames. The lawn needed mowing. Small things. Easy to miss if you weren't looking. But I was looking now. My mother met me at the door with a hug that lasted a beat too long. Sarah, you look wonderful. How was the drive? Fine. I stepped inside and my nose was immediately hit with the smell of pot roast and something else. Something stale. Like windows that hadn't been opened in too long air that had been circulating the same breath for months. Your father's in the dining room. He's got everything set up. Everything set up. Like a presentation. Like this was a business meeting and not a family dinner. Red flags. I followed her to the dining room where my father sat at the head of the table with a folder in front of him. Not just any folder, one of those official-looking accordion folders that lawyers use, the kind that says this is serious business. Sarah, he stood, gave me an awkward half hug. Thanks for coming. Can I get you something to drink, water, soda? Water's fine. My mother scurried off to the kitchen. I sat down across from my father, my eyes on the folder. He cleared his throat. So, like I said on the phone, we're refinancing the house. Better rates, lower monthly payments. But the bank needs a cosigner. Just a formality, you know how they are. Bureaucracy and all that. A cosigner. I kept my voice neutral. Why do you need a cosigner? You've owned this house for 30 years. Well, the thing is... He opened the folder, not meeting my eyes. We took out a second mortgage a few years back. Business investment that didn't pan out. So now we're consolidating everything and they want someone with good credit to co-sign. You know, just to make sure we get the best rate. My mother returned with a glass of water and set it in front of me with shaking hands. A second mortgage. Business investment. These were words that should have been explained years ago, not dropped on me like bombs during what was supposed to be a simple document review. How much is the second mortgage? That's not really important. How much, Dad? He shuffled papers. About $180,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $180,000. On top of whatever they still owed on the original mortgage. On a house that was probably worth $220, maybe $250 in this market. They were underwater. Drowning in debt. Let me see the papers. He slid the folder across the table. I opened it, and my heart sank. Page after page of dense legal language. But even through the jargon, I could see the red flags. Loan amounts that didn't match. Interest rates that were highlighted and then crossed out. Pages with sections blacked out completely. And buried in the fine print, second lien holder. This wasn't refinancing. This was something else. Dad, there are parts of this that are completely blacked out. Oh, that's just technical stuff. Our lawyer said not to worry about it. Your lawyer? I looked up at him. You have a lawyer helping with this. Well, the bank's lawyer, same thing. It absolutely was not the same thing. I flipped through more pages, my professional training kicking in, despite my emotional turmoil. Monthly payment amounts that didn't match the loan total. A balloon payment buried on page 17. And then I saw at the page that explained why they needed a cosigner. They were already behind on payments. 4 months behind. "You're in default," I said flatly. My mother made a small sound. My father's jaw tightened. "We've had some setbacks. Medical bills. Which one of you had medical bills?" Silence. "Dad." "Who had medical bills?" "It's complicated, Sarah." I stood up the chair, scraping against the floor. "I'm taking these documents with me. My lawyer will review them." "Your lawyer?" My father's voice rose. "Why do you need a lawyer? Don't you trust your own parents?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with years of resentment and unspoken truths. "I trust documents," I said quietly. "I trust numbers. I trust contracts. I've learned not to trust conversations that start with lies." "We didn't lie." "You told me this was refinancing. It's not. You told me it was a formality. It's not. You need me to co-sign because you're in default and no bank will touch you otherwise." I grabbed the folder. "I'm taking these to someone who can actually explain what I'd be signing." "Sarah, please." My mother's voice broke. "We just need a little help. After everything we've done for you, like what, Mom?" The words came out sharper than I intended, but years of resentment were bubbling up. "Like paying for Madison's college while I worked 3 jobs to pay for mine. Like throwing her a high school graduation party that cost more than my entire freshman year. Like buying her a car while I drove a 15-year-old Toyota held together with duct tape and prayer. That's not fair." "You're right, it's not fair, but it's true." I walked to the door, the folder tucked under my arm. "If you walk out with those," my father said, his voice cold, "don't bother coming back." I turned to look at him. At this man who had never quite known what to do with a daughter who didn't need him, who had built her own life without his help or approval, who had quietly slipped away while he poured all his attention and resources into the daughter who did. "Okay," I said simply, and I left. To be continued, waiting for your feedback before proceeding to Chapter 3.5 to complete Part 1. The drive back to Chicago that evening was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white, the accordion folder sitting on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. Rain started falling somewhere around the Illinois-Indiana border, and I let it blur my windshield for a few miles before turning on the wipers. My phone rang twice, my mother both times. I didn't answer. By the time I pulled into my apartment building's parking garage, it was past 11. I grabbed the folder and took the elevator up to the 8th floor, my mind racing through everything I'd seen in those documents. The blacked-out sections, the missed payments, the desperation in my father's voice when I'd said I was leaving. Inside my apartment, I made chamomile tea I didn't drink and spread the documents across my kitchen table. Under the harsh LED lights, they looked even worse than they had in my parents' dining room. I pulled out my laptop and started a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, transaction. Column C, amount. Column D, notes. It was after 2 in the morning when I finished compiling everything I could understand from the documents. The picture they painted was devastating. First mortgage originated in 1995 for $185,000. They'd been paying it down steadily until 2018. Current balance, $87,000. Monthly payment, $1.100. Status 4 months behind. Total arrears, $4,400 plus late fees. Second mortgage, originated in 2022 for $180,000. Interest rate 9.5% predatory, my brain noted automatically. Monthly payment, $1,650. Status 4 months behind. Total arrears, $6,600 plus penalties. Combined monthly obligation, $2,750. I did the math on what my father would need to earn to afford that. At least $110,000 a year accounting for other expenses. But I knew from my mother's occasional comments that his insurance business had slowed down after he'd had to close his agency and go back to working for someone else. He was probably making $60,000, maybe $70,000. If that. They were drowning, and they'd been drowning for a while. I made coffee as the sun came up and called Ben at 7:30, knowing he'd be up. He was always up. "Please tell me you didn't sign anything," he answered instead of hello. "I didn't sign anything, but Ben, it's bad." "How bad?" I told him. "All of it. The second mortgage, the missed payments, the blacked-out sections, the way my father had tried to make it sound like a simple refinance." "Jesus, Sarah. I need a lawyer, a real one. I know a guy, James Chen. He specializes in real estate and contract law. Want me to send you his info? Please. By Monday morning, I had an appointment. James Chen's office was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and chrome and expensive art that probably cost more than my car. He was in his early 40s, wearing a suit that fit perfectly, and he greeted me with a handshake that was firm but not aggressive. "Ben speaks highly of you," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "He said you might have a complex situation." "That's one way to put it." I handed him the folder. He put on reading glasses and started going through the documents, his expression growing more serious with each page. After 20 minutes, he looked up. "Sarah, I need you to sit down." "I am sitting down." "Then maybe hold on to the armrests." He removed his glasses. "This is worse than I thought." My stomach dropped. "How much worse?" "Your parents are in pre-foreclosure. Do you know what that means?" "The bank is starting the process to take the house." "Correct. And based on these dates," he flipped to a page with red stamps, "they have maybe 60 days before the bank files for foreclosure. At that point, it becomes public record. And if they can't pay what's owed, which looking at these numbers they can't, they'll lose the house." "How much do they owe?" He pulled out a calculator and started adding. First mortgage arrears with penalties approximately $5,200. Second mortgage arrears with penalties approximately $7,800. Combined $13,000 just to get current. That's not counting the ongoing monthly payments of $2,750. And if I had co-signed this, James looked at me over his glasses, you would be equally liable for the entire debt, all $267,000 of it. The number felt like a punch to the gut. $267,000. Plus penalties plus interest accruing daily. Sarah, if you had signed this and they defaulted, which they absolutely would have given their payment history, the bank could come after you for the full amount. They could garnish your wages, put a lien on any property you own, destroy your credit for 7 years. But I'm their daughter. The bank doesn't care. A co-signer is fully responsible. That's why they needed you, someone with good credit and a stable income. He closed the folder. Your parents weren't asking for help. They were looking for a lifeboat, and they were willing to let you drown with them. I sat there processing. Part of me had known it was bad, but hearing it laid out like this, hearing a professional confirm that my parents had been willing to destroy my financial future to save theirs. "What do I do?" I asked quietly. "You do nothing. You don't sign. You don't co-sign. You don't give them money, not a penny, because any payment you make could be construed as accepting responsibility for the debt. They're my parents. They're adults who made choices, bad choices, and now they're trying to make those choices your problem." He softened slightly. "Look, I get it. Family is complicated, but you can't save them from this. The hole is too deep." "What will happen to them?" "Best case, they declare bankruptcy, work out a payment plan with creditors, and move to something they can afford. Worst case, the bank takes the house. They still owe the difference between what it sells for and what they owe, and they spend the next decade rebuilding. And if they try to rope someone else in..." James was quiet for a moment. "Do you have siblings?" "A sister, Madison. She's 25. "Does she know about this?" "I don't think so." "Then they might try to transfer the property to her. Make it look like a gift, get her to assume the debt without realizing what she's taking on." "That's fraud." "It is, but it happens all the time in desperate families." He leaned forward. "Sarah, if they try to do that, you might want to consider reporting it." "Reporting my own parents." "To protect your sister. To protect whoever they target next." He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is Detective Lisa Moreno. She works in financial fraud. If you suspect your parents are attempting to fraudulently transfer debt or misrepresent their financial situation to potential co-signers, she's the person to call." I took the card. It felt like a betrayal just holding it. "I can't..." "You don't have to decide now. Just keep it, in case." I left his office with the card in my wallet and a sick feeling in my stomach. My parents were desperate. And desperate people, as Grandma Maggie would say, do stupid things. I just didn't know yet how stupid. The first hint that my parents had found their next target came in late July, buried in Madison's Instagram stories. I didn't follow my sister's social media religiously. Her perfectly curated life was usually too painful to watch, but I'd started checking it more often after my father's refinancing disaster, looking for clues, patterns, warning signs, and there they were, subtle at first. A photo of Madison on our parents' front porch, barefoot in sundress, caption, "There's no place like home." A selfie with our mother in the kitchen, learning family recipes from the best chef I know. A video tour of the backyard. Can't wait to make memories here for years to come. Each post had hundreds of likes, friends commenting "so lucky" and "your parents are amazing" and goals. But it was the post from August 15th that made my blood run cold. Madison Connor and our parents on the front porch, all four of them smiling at the camera. The caption, "Some big announcements coming soon. Connor and I have been so blessed by family. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones you never expected. #blessed #family #future goals." I screenshot it and sent it to Ben. His response came 30 seconds later. "Oh no." Oh no was right. I scrolled through the comments. Aunt Pat had written, "So exciting, can't wait to hear the news." Uncle Mike, "Congrats, kiddo." Friends of Madison asking, "OMG, what is it? And tell us. But it was Connor's comment that caught my attention. "Still processing everything but grateful. Still processing. Not so excited or can't wait to share." Processing. I clicked on Connor's profile. He'd always been an active poster real estate photos, gym selfies, football games. But his posts had dropped off significantly in the past month. And the few he had posted had a strange quality to them. A photo of a sunset. Sometimes you just need to sit and think. A picture of a beer, heavy day. Needed this. A gym selfie with no caption at all. These weren't the posts of an excited groom-to-be who'd just received a generous gift from his future in-laws. These were the posts of someone stressed, anxious, confused. I needed to know more, but I couldn't exactly call Connor and ask him what my parents had promised him. We weren't close, just friendly at family gatherings, the obligatory relationship between future in-laws. So I did what any concerned financial analyst would do. I started digging. Property records were public. I pulled up the county clerk's website and searched for my parents' address. Current owners, Robert and Linda Mitchell. Purchase date, 1995. Purchase price, $185,000. Liens 2. First lien, original mortgage, $87,234 remaining. Second lien, taken out March 2022, $180,000 at 9.5% interest. Total debt, $267,234. Assessed value of property, $242,000. They were underwater by $25,000. And that was before penalties, late fees, and accruing interest. I pulled up the foreclosure database next. There it was, pre-foreclosure notice filed June 30th. They had until September 30th to cure the default or face formal foreclosure proceedings. 60 days. My parents had 60 days to come up with $13,000 to get current on their payments, plus proof they could maintain the $2,750 monthly obligation going forward. They didn't have that kind of money. I knew it. The bank knew it. And apparently they'd decided Madison was their solution. My phone rang that evening. My mother's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sarah, honey." Her voice was too bright, too cheerful. The voice she used when she wanted something. "How are you? We haven't talked in weeks. I've been busy." Of course. Your important job in the big city." A slight edge to that last part. My mother had never quite forgiven me for moving to Chicago. "Listen, I was calling because we have some wonderful news." Here it comes, I thought. "Madison and Connor are going to be so happy. Your father and I have been thinking about their future, about giving them a good start, and we've decided to give them the house as a wedding gift." The house. I kept my voice neutral. "Yes, isn't it perfect? They'll have a place to start their life together, no mortgage payment to worry about." "Mom, the house has a mortgage, 2 of them." Silence. "Well, yes, technically, but we're working on that. The point is, does Madison know about the debt? That's not... It's complicated, Sarah. It's actually very simple. You owe $267,000 on a house worth $242,000. You're 4 months behind on payments. The bank has filed a pre-foreclosure notice, and you're planning to transfer this to Madison without telling her any of that. How do you..." My mother's voice turned sharp. "Have you been investigating us? Public records, Mom. Anyone can look them up." "Well, it's none of your business. This is between us and your sister." Does she know it's none of my business? Does she know that her gift comes with a $250,000 debt and imminent foreclosure? "We're going to handle that before we transfer. With what money? You couldn't handle it when you asked me to co-sign. What's changed in 2 months?" Silence again. longer this time. Madison is more understanding than you are, my mother finally said. She appreciates family. She doesn't question everything we do. She trusts you. There's a difference. Sarah, I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate you trying to bury my sister in debt she doesn't know about. Have you told Connor? Connor's a real estate agent. He understands these things. Does he? Because his Instagram suggests he's pretty stressed about something. You're stalking Connor's Instagram now. I'm trying to protect my sister from making the biggest financial mistake of her life. This is why you're alone, Sarah. My mother's voice went cold. You can't trust anyone. You can't let anyone help. You push everyone away with your suspicion and your spreadsheets and your I have to go mom. Sarah, I hung up. My hands were shaking. I made tea I didn't drink and stared at my laptop screen at the foreclosure notice still pulled up. They were really going to do it. They were going to rope Madison into this mess, let her sign papers she didn't understand, saddle her with debt that would take decades to pay off. And Connor, poor Connor, who thought he was marrying into a stable family, who thought he was getting a free house to start his life. He had no idea he was about to inherit a financial disaster. I pulled out my wallet and found the business card James had given me. Detective Lisa Moreno, Financial Fraud Division. I stared at it for a long time. Reporting your own parents. The words felt impossible, unthinkable. Families didn't do that to each other. Except my parents were about to do something worse to Madison. I picked up my phone, took a photo of the business card, and saved it to my notes, just in case. The weeks between my mother's phone call and Thanksgiving passed in a strange, suspended tension. I watched from Chicago as Madison's Instagram filled with wedding updates and cryptic posts about exciting changes and new chapters. Connor's posts remained sparse and vaguely stressed. My parents called twice, once to invite me to Thanksgiving. We'd hate for you to be alone on the holiday, once to ask if I'd reconsidered helping them. Just a small loan, Sarah, to tide us over. I declined both offers, but Grandma Maggie called in early November, and that was different. Sarah, sweetheart, we need to talk. What's wrong, Grandma? Your father came to see me last week. Her voice was tight. He asked to borrow against my life insurance. My heart sank. Did you? Of course not. I may be old, but I'm not senile. I know desperation when I see it. She paused. He mentioned something about Madison taking over the house after the wedding. Said it would be settled by Thanksgiving. Settled meaning she'll have signed papers she doesn't understand. That's what I figured. Sarah, your sister, doesn't know, does she, about the debt? I don't think so. If she did, Connor wouldn't be going along with it. Your parents are planning to surprise her. After she signs. Your mother let it slip when I asked directly. I closed my eyes. They're going to ambush her with the truth after she's legally responsible. Looks that way. Maggie sighed. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Yes, you do. You've always known. You're just trying to convince yourself there's another way. She was right. I'd spent 3 weeks hoping my parents would come to their senses, would tell Madison the truth, would find some other solution that didn't involve destroying their daughter's financial future. But they weren't going to. Desperate people don't make rational choices. Are you coming to Thanksgiving? Maggie asked. I think I have to. Bring evidence, sweetheart. If you're going to do this, do it right. The week before Thanksgiving, I compiled everything. Printed copies of the mortgage statements, the foreclosure notice, the property assessment, the timeline of missed payments, screenshots of the refinancing documents my father had tried to get me to sign, a summary page I'd created showing the total debt versus the house value. All of it went into a manila folder that I placed in my work bag. I also made 2 phone calls. The first was to James Chen. I might need to file that fraud report. When Thanksgiving Day, they're planning to announce the house transfer. I don't think they've told my sister about the debt yet. If they make the announcement publicly and you have witnesses to the fact that they misrepresented the property's status, that strengthens any fraud case. I know. Sarah, are you sure about this? No, but I'm sure about protecting Madison. The second call was harder. I pulled up the photo of Detective Moreno's card and dialed the number. Moreno Financial Fraud. Detective Moreno, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I need to report a potential case of mortgage fraud and fraudulent property transfer. I explained everything. The second mortgage, the missed payments, the attempt to get me to co-sign the plan to transfer the property to my sister without disclosing the debt. When is this transfer supposed to happen? Moreno asked. They're announcing it Thanksgiving Day, but I don't know when they plan to actually sign papers. And your sister doesn't know about the debt. I don't believe so. Her fiancé is a real estate agent. He thinks he's getting a free house. Moreno was quiet for a moment. Ms. Mitchell, I appreciate you coming forward. Cases like this are more common than you'd think. Family fraud is particularly difficult because victims often don't want to press charges. I'm not doing this to punish my parents. I'm doing it to protect my sister. I understand. Let me open a case file. If they go through with the transfer without proper disclosure, we may need to intervene. How would that work? Depends on timing, but if they're making the announcement at a family dinner, that's a public declaration of intent. If you have documentation that they've misrepresented the property's financial status, she paused. Would you be comfortable wearing a wire? A wire like in the movies? Not exactly, but a recorded conversation could be valuable evidence. Illinois is a one-party consent state. You can record conversations you're part of without telling the other parties. I'll think about it. The offer stands. Call me if you change your mind. I didn't wear a wire, but I did record the conversation that happened at Thanksgiving, just using my phone placed strategically in my purse. I also sent Detective Moreno the address and approximate timing of the dinner, in case I wrote in the text, just in case things go wrong. She responded with a simple, "Understood, I'll be available." Thanksgiving morning, I woke at dawn in my Chicago apartment. Couldn't sleep. Kept running through scenarios in my head, imagining how the day would unfold. Best case, I was wrong. My parents had found some way to clear the debt, and Madison really was getting a wonderful gift. Worst case, everything imploded. My family never spoke to me again, and I spent the rest of my life wondering if I'd done the right thing. Most likely case somewhere in between. Painful, messy, necessary. I showered, dressed in my black sweater dress, practical professional, not trying too hard. I wanted to blend in, be forgettable until the moment I couldn't be ignored anymore. The manila folder went into my purse. My phone, fully charged, went in beside it. I stopped for coffee on the way out of the city. The barista wished me a happy Thanksgiving. I tried to smile. The drive to my parents' house took 3 hours. I spent most of it practicing what I'd say, how I'd say it, trying to find words that would cut through the celebration without being cruel. There weren't any. An hour outside the city, Ben texted, "You've got this. You're doing the right thing. Call me after." I pulled over at a rest stop 20 minutes from my parents' house. Sat in the parking lot watching families pile out of minivans, kids running around, everyone excited for turkey and pie and the illusion of togetherness. I almost turned back. But then I thought about Madison, 25 years old, about to sign her life away without knowing it. About to start her marriage buried in debt she didn't understand, trapped in a house she couldn't afford, while our parents smiled and accepted congratulations for their generosity. I started the car and drove the last 20 minutes. When I pulled up to the house, there were already 5 cars in the driveway. I recognized Aunt Pat's SUV, Uncle Mike's truck, Cousin Rebecca's sedan. The party had started without me. I sat in my car with the engine running, staring at the warm glow from the windows. Inside, my family was laughing, eating appetizers, existing in the last moments before everything changed. My phone buzzed. Madison had posted to Instagram, "Thankful for family love and the best parents anyone could ask for. Big announcement coming." I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and got out of the car. Grandma Maggie met me at the door as if she'd been waiting. "Ready?" she whispered. "No." "Good. That means you're thinking clearly." She squeezed my hand. "I'm with you, sweetheart. Whatever happens." I stepped inside. The house smelled like turkey and pie and lies, and somewhere in my purse the manila folder waited to burn it all down. The silence that fell after my question, "Should I tell them, Dad, or do you want to explain?" had weight to it. Physical pressing, the kind of quiet that makes people shift in their chairs and reach for their water glasses just to have something to do with their hands. My father's face had gone from ruddy Thanksgiving warmth to pale shock in the span of a heartbeat. The fork in his hand trembled slightly before he set it down with exaggerated care. "Sarah," my mother said, her voice artificially bright, "this really isn't the time." "It's exactly the time, Mom. I kept my eyes on the manila folder in front of me, not opening it yet. Let them wonder. Let them panic. Because everyone here is celebrating Madison getting the house. Don't you think they should know what they're really celebrating? Madison's smile had frozen on her face, a wax figure of happiness. Sarah, what are you talking about? Aunt Pat leaned forward, her enthusiasm dimming. Is something wrong? Wrong. I finally looked up, meeting my father's eyes across the table. Dad, why don't you tell everyone about the documents you asked me to sign last June? The ones you said were for refinancing. His jaw clenched. Sarah, you're making this into something it's not, am I? I opened the folder. The papers inside were neatly organized, each section marked with colored tabs. I'd spent weeks making sure everything was clear, undeniable, impossible to talk around. Because I have the documents right here, along with some other interesting paperwork I pulled from public records. Connor straightened in his chair. As a real estate agent, the words public records clearly caught his attention. What kind of paperwork? I slid the first document across the table, a copy of the second mortgage statement. This kind. Connor picked it up, his eyes scanning. I watched his face change as he read. Confusion, then comprehension, then something that looked like betrayal. This is... He looked at my father. You said the house was paid off. It's complicated, my father started. It's actually very simple. I pulled out the second document, the property assessment. The house is worth approximately $242,000. The total debt on the house is $264. That's 2 mortgages, both currently in default. Default? Madison's voice cracked. Aunt Pat's husband, Uncle Mike, who'd been quietly eating his dinner, set down his fork. Robert, is this true? We're handling it, are you? I pulled out the next paper. Because this pre-foreclosure notice from the county says differently. Filed June 30th. You had 90 days to cure the default. That deadline passed September 30th. The room erupted in whispers. Aunt Pat gasped. Cousin Rebecca pulled out her phone, probably Googling pre-foreclosure. Uncle Mike sat back in his chair, shaking his head. Wait. Connor stood up, the mortgage statement still in his hand. You told me you showed me documents that said this house was free and clear. We were going to clear it before... Before what? Connor's voice rose. Before we signed, before Madison took legal responsibility for $250,000 in debt. Madison looked between Connor and our parents, her perfect makeup starting to run as tears formed. I don't understand. You said you were giving us the house as a gift. We are, my mother insisted. We just need to work out some details. Details. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, you're not giving her a gift. You're giving her your debt. There's a difference. That's not fair. What's not fair is lying to her. I pulled out another document, the timeline I'd created. You took out the second mortgage in March 2022. You used that money to pay off credit cards you'd run up trying to maintain the appearance of a lifestyle you couldn't afford. You've been robbing Peter to pay Paul ever since. And when you couldn't keep up the juggling act anymore, you tried to rope me into co-signing. When I refused, you moved on to Madison. Sarah, please. My father's voice broke. Please what, Dad? Please don't tell the truth. Please let you destroy Madison's credit and financial future the way you tried to destroy mine. Grandma Maggie spoke up from her end of the table, her voice quiet but firm. I think everyone needs to hear this, Robert. All of it. My father looked at his mother with something like desperation. Mother, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You came to me last month asking to borrow against my life insurance. You're desperate, and desperate men make terrible choices. Aunt Pat turned to my mother. Linda, did you know about this? My mother's hands were shaking. We thought we could fix it before anyone needed to know. We didn't want to burden the girls. You weren't trying to avoid burdening us, I said. You were trying to avoid consequences. There's a difference. Madison stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. How much? Her voice was barely a whisper. How much debt? Connor answered before I could. He'd been doing the math on his phone. If these numbers are right, you'd be taking on about $267,000 in debt on a house worth $242,000. You'd be underwater by $25,000 before you even started. But that's... Madison's face crumpled. That's impossible. I can't afford that. We can't afford that. I know, I said gently. That's why I'm telling you now, before you sign anything. You've ruined everything. My father's voice exploded across the table loud enough to make everyone jump. This was supposed to be a celebration, a happy day, and you've turned it into the truth. I met his anger with calm. Yeah, I did. Because the alternative was watching Madison sign her life away to save you from your mistakes. Connor was pacing now, running his hands through his hair the way he did when he was stressed. I'd seen him do it at family dinners when Madison's parents told embarrassing stories. But this was different. This was his entire future crumbling. I need air, he said. I can't. I need to think. Connor, Madison reached for him. Don't. He pulled away, not roughly but firmly. Madison, I love you, but I can't process this right now. It's not my fault, she said, and she was crying for real now, mascara tracking down her cheeks. I didn't know. I know you didn't. His voice softened. But I did my due diligence. I pulled comps, I researched the property, and your dad showed me paperwork that said it was paid off. He lied to my face, multiple times. He turned to my father. I'm a real estate agent. Do you know what this does to my reputation if people find out I almost married into a fraudulent property transfer? It's not fraud, my father started. It absolutely is fraud, Uncle Mike interrupted. He worked in banking and apparently recognized the severity before anyone else. Misrepresenting property status, concealing liens, inducing someone to take on debt without disclosure, that's textbook fraud. My mother sobbed. We weren't trying to hurt anyone. Just financially destroy your daughters. Aunt Pat's voice was ice. Linda, how could you? We were going to tell her after what I demanded. After she signed, after she was legally responsible. That's not telling her mom. That's trapping her. Connor grabbed his coat from the rack by the door. I need to leave. I'm sorry, but I can't be here right now. Connor, please. Madison was openly sobbing now. Don't go. We can figure this out. Figure out what your parents lied to both of us. They were going to saddle us with debt we can't afford on a house that's worth less than we'd owe. He paused at the door. I need time to think about what this means. For us. For everything. Are you breaking up with me? The question hung in the air. Everyone at the table held their breath. I don't know, Connor said honestly. Right now I don't know anything except that I can't trust your parents, and I need to figure out if I can still trust you. But I didn't know. Madison's voice rose to a wail. I believe you, but you also didn't question anything. You just accepted that they'd give you a $250,000 house out of the goodness of their hearts. He looked at her sadly. We need to talk, but not here. Not now. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than if he'd slammed it. Madison collapsed back into her chair, her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. And for the first time in my life, I felt sorry for her. Aunt Pat was the first to break the silence. Robert, I need you to explain something to me. My father looked at her with hollow eyes. You've owned this house for almost 30 years. You should have been close to paying it off. How did you end up $267,000 in debt? The question everyone wanted answered but hadn't asked. My father's shoulders slumped. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. The business failed. What business? Uncle Mike asked. My insurance agency. I told everyone I'd sold it, that I was semi-retired. The truth is, he swallowed hard. The truth is, it went under in 2018. I lost everything. The client base, the building, all of it. I had to go back to working for someone else at 60% of what I used to make. My mother was crying quietly, her napkin pressed to her mouth. We'd been living on credit for years before that, my father continued, keeping up appearances. Madison's college, her car, the wedding planning. We couldn't tell anyone we were struggling, so we borrowed more. The second mortgage, I said. He nodded. I thought I could fix it. Invest the money, make it back, pay everything off, but he laughed bitterly. Turns out I'm not as smart as I thought I was. So you decided to make it Sarah's problem, Grandma Maggie said. And when she was smart enough to refuse, you moved on to Madison. We were going to help her. Help her. I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. By burying her in debt, by ruining her credit, by destroying her engagement. We didn't think. No, Grandma Maggie said sharply. You didn't think. That's the problem, Robert. You never thought about anyone but yourself. Madison lifted her head. Her face was blotchy, her eyes swollen. How much of my money have you spent? The question caught everyone off guard. What, my mother asked. My money, my college fund, my car fund, my wedding fund? How much of it actually existed and how much was borrowed? Silence. Madison, my father started. How much? She screamed it this time and everyone flinched. My father's voice was barely a whisper. All of it. All of it, Madison repeated numbly. We were going to pay you back. With what money you can't even pay your mortgage. She stood up, swaying slightly. My whole life you made me think I was special, that you were giving me things because you loved me more, that I deserved it because I was the good daughter who stayed close and didn't ask questions like Sarah did. She looked at me. You were right. You were right to leave. You were right not to trust them. You were right about everything. Maddie, don't. She held up her hand. I can't be here right now. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Madison, please. My mother started to stand. Let her go, I said. She needs time. The door closed. 2 children gone in the span of 10 minutes. We sat in the wreckage of Thanksgiving dinner for maybe 5 more minutes. Aunt Pat and Uncle Mike whispered to each other. Cousin Rebecca looked like she wanted to disappear into her phone. Grandma Maggie watched my parents with something between pity and disgust. And then came the knock. 3 sharp raps. Official. Authoritative. Everyone's head turned toward the door. Who could that be? My mother whispered. My father stood slowly like a man walking to his execution. He opened the door. Detective Lisa Moreno stood on the threshold, badge clipped to her belt, expression professionally neutral. She was younger than I'd expected from her voice on the phone, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Mr. Robert Mitchell. Yes. I'm Detective Moreno with the Financial Fraud Division. I need to speak with you and your wife regarding your property and mortgage records. You could have heard a pin drop. My mother made a small, wounded sound. My father's face went from pale to gray. What is this about? He managed. We received a report of potential mortgage fraud and fraudulent property transfer. I have some questions. She glanced past him into the dining room, taking in the scene. The scattered documents on the table. The family frozen in various states of shock. Is now a bad time? Yes, my father said. No, I said simultaneously, standing up. Now is perfect. Moreno's eyes found me. Ms. Mitchell. Sarah Mitchell, we spoke on the phone. Understanding flickered across her face. I see, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, I can come back tomorrow if you prefer, but these questions do need to be answered soon. What questions? Aunt Pat found her voice. Robert, what is she talking about? Moreno stepped inside uninvited but authorized. I'm investigating allegations that Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell attempted to fraudulently transfer property encumbered with undisclosed liens to family members, specifically misrepresenting the financial status of the property to induce assumption of debt. Uncle Mike whistled low. That's a felony. It can be, yes. Moreno pulled out a notebook. Mr. Mitchell, did you or did you not show documents to your daughter Madison and her fiancé Connor Blake, indicating that this property was free of liens? My father looked at my mother. My mother looked at the floor. I want a lawyer, my father said. That's your right, but I should inform you that we have documentation suggesting you attempted the same scheme with your other daughter. She glanced at me. Sarah Mitchell in June of this year. We also have testimony from Margaret Hart regarding attempts to fraudulently borrow against her life insurance. Grandma Maggie nodded. I'll testify to that. Mother. My father looked betrayed. You asked me to commit fraud, Robert. I'm not going to lie for you. Moreno made notes. I'll need to interview each of you separately, and I'll need copies of all relevant documents. Her eyes landed on the papers spread across the table. Are those the mortgage documents? Some of them, I said. I have complete copies if you need them. I do. She looked at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, you're not under arrest. Yet. But I strongly suggest you retain legal counsel immediately. Attempting to continue with any property transfer at this point would be inadvisable. My mother finally found her voice. Sarah, you did this. You called the police on your own parents. Everyone looked at me. I met my mother's eyes steadily. I protected my sister. That's what you should have done. We're ruined, my father whispered. Everything's ruined. No, I said quietly. Everything was already ruined. You just didn't want to admit it. Detective Moreno spent the next hour interviewing people separately. She spoke with my parents in the kitchen, with me in the living room, with Grandma Maggie on the porch, with Aunt Pat and Uncle Mike in the den. By the time she left, it was dark outside. Most of the family had already gone uncomfortable with the police presence, unwilling to be associated with what was clearly becoming a legal mess. Only Grandma Maggie remained. She found me in the living room staring at the cold remnants of Thanksgiving dinner on the table. "You did good, sweetheart." "Did I Connor left? Madison hates me. My parents might go to jail." "Your parents made choices that might send them to jail. You just refused to let them take Madison down with them." She sat beside me. "That took courage." "It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like I just blew up my family." "Your family was already broken, Sarah. You just stopped pretending it wasn't." Through the window, I could see my parents sitting in the kitchen. My mother was crying. My father had his head in his hands. They looked small, defeated, human in a way I'd never seen them before. And despite everything, despite the lies, the manipulation, the years of favoritism and neglect, I felt sorry for them. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Grandma Maggie patted my hand. "Now the real work begins. Cleaning up the mess, facing the consequences, figuring out how to move forward." "Can we move forward?" "I don't know. But I know you did the right thing even when it was hard, especially when it was hard." She stood slowly, using the arm of the couch for balance. "I'm going to head home. You should too. There's nothing more you can do here tonight." "What about them?" I nodded toward the kitchen. "They're adults. They'll figure it out. Or they won't. But that's not your responsibility anymore, Sarah. You've done your part." She kissed the top of my head and left. I sat alone in the living room for a long time, listening to my mother cry in the other room. Eventually, I gathered my documents back into the folder and walked to the door. My father looked up as I passed the kitchen. "Sarah." I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said. "For all of it. I'm so sorry. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come, so I just left." Outside, the November air was cold and clean. I sat in my car for a long time before starting it, watching the lights in my childhood home, wondering if I'd ever walk through that door again. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "I hate you, but thank you. I don't know which one I mean more." And then another from Ben. "You okay?" I typed back. "No, but I will be." I started the car and drove back to Chicago, leaving the ruins of Thanksgiving dinner behind me. The truth was out. Now came the hard part, living with it. End of Part 2. Word count 3, 247 words. Next Part 3, the resolution, the aftermath, consequences, and rebuilding.